Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Team Tuesday this week with Nancy Bears. Hi Nancy, welcome back.
Hey, glad to be back, Vasco. Very
Absolutely.
cool.
Love the energy as well. Thank you for that. So, Team Tuesday, we talk about how sometimes teams destroy themselves by developing certain patterns or behaviors. But before we dive into that, share with us, what was the book potentially most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
It's actually three combined. Yeah.
Let's start with one.
Well, it started all out with Drive by Daniel Pink, but last year I read When by Daniel Pink, and that's about perfect timing. And when it was 2 years ago, actually, and when I read that, it's about which times of the day are you best in certain types of work. And when I look at a Scrum team, what we usually do when we plan our brainstorm sessions, events, Scrum events, retros, and whatnot, we tend to look at available time slots. And what it taught me is to look at what time of the day can this meeting be best planned to get the most out of the team. I combined that with deep work from Cal Newport, who explains a lot about getting into focus, getting into flow. And by that, I try to mix and match within a team to get them, especially developers, to get them as much time as possible in a day where they could get in this state of focus and state of deep work. So I really fiddled around the whole calendar for that whole team combined by combining these two books. And the third book, and that's a part that Daniel Pink left out in When, is the fact that Daniel Pink talks about daily cycles, but being a woman, we also have a monthly cycle. And it's very interesting to figure out how you can work as a Scrum Master when you're a female Scrum Master to work with your female cycle as well. Because when your hormones tend to change throughout the month, you can try and figure out on how to work best with your team based on the zone of creativity you're in, and things like that. So I'm working on a talk on this. So perfect timing for teams, perfect timing combined with deep work, and perfect timing for women in teams.
Absolutely. I love how you started by saying it's three books combined, and then you explained so well how the books combined. So thank you for that. And definitely quite a lot of insights and knowledge behind those books. And also love the fact that you brought your femininity to the point, because it is true that we are all different and not everybody works in the same cycle. Maybe I can jump in and add another dimension to this conversation. Mm-hmm. I think that, what motivates us, when are we best at something, having that focus or deep work time, as you were discussing. There's also another aspect that I've been thinking about. I've been actually asking myself whether I should write something about this. So there's this very old health system called Ayurveda. It comes from India. It's 5,000 years old, or it comes from what is now India, rather. And it's 5,000 years old, probably more. The first writings are at least 5,000 years old. And it talks about how humans are different. Like even, for example, that every person has a different set of characteristics, mentally and physically, and that those characteristics change over time. Right? That, they can change during the day, but they can also change in larger time frames like a month or a year or decades or the whole lifespan, right? And I really like that because it brings us, as a Scrum Master, it brings us the idea that teams are best suited to work in a certain fashion. Like, for example, some teams are very good at responding very quickly, at just jumping from one topic to the other, getting it done very well with high quality and so on, while other teams perhaps need longer deep work timeframes during the day, and even during a sprint, and even during a month. So those different in Ayurveda they are called body types. In I would call them team types, are also an important aspect. I don't know if you have thought about that, but that's something that I've been thinking about over the last few years as well. That so all of those aspects you mentioned, plus the fact that even the type of work we give the teams might be appropriate or not appropriate for how they are formed and the people, the individuals in that team.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at it from a team coaching perspective, of course, it's looking at it in a holistic view and looking at a team as a system. And what I found particularly interesting about team coaching is that you are not coaching the individuals, but you are coaching the relationships in between. So this makes sense in the sense that I've never given it really thought, but also it was sort of a gut feeling that I had teams where I had 1 week sprints and I had teams where I had 2 week sprints and 3 week sprints. And I used to fiddle around with that if I felt like this is a team that needs shorter feedback loops or better shorter feedback loops. Or so yeah, it makes sense if you look at a team from a holistic point of view and looking at it as sort of like an organism.
Which it is,
type.
by the way, right?
Yeah.
It is, because it's a system of people, which is in itself an entity.
Yeah. So yes, that makes sense, and it might. That's why I also try to look at the timing of a team. And I think when you start in a new team, it's always nice to find out what's the heartbeat of this team and figure it out together. And don't be too afraid to change every once in a while. Inspect and adapt, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I have an invitation for you after this introduction to your book. So when you have that talk ready, let's do a bonus episode on the topic of the talk.
Ooh, yeah, cool.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Now we turn our attention to that team we were just talking about and how sometimes they develop their own behaviors or patterns that lead to problems over time. So tell us a little bit about that team, what their context was, but then walk us through those small signs you started seeing. Walk us through the process of development of that behavior or pattern that ultimately led to problems.
It was a team that was high on energy and high on the willingness to deliver value. But there were some external factors which made it a bit hard to actually get increments into a live environment. And at first they were very dedicated to make that happen. And they tried to remove their own impediments like crazy. I didn't have to do that much about it. So for me as a Scrum Master, that was kind of a easy job. It wasn't an easy job, but because they hit a wall each and every time they want to deliver value, and each and every review, they were fair and honest to their stakeholders and saying, okay, so we didn't achieve the sprint goal since it isn't on live, and in our definition of done, it says increments should be on live. They got pushed back by the stakeholders, like, when are you delivering value? And they were like, we are not delivering value, and we are telling you why, and we are explaining you why, and we are explaining you which help we need to actually deliver value. At one point, they just gave up on trying to get it released to production because it was such hard work every time to push back and say, we are not delivering value, we are not delivering value, that they just started keeping up appearances with velocities and story points and whatnot, just to tell the stakeholders, so we delivered 20 story points this sprint. And the stakeholders were like, yay, well done, team. And they were like, yeah, but this is a facade. So they were slowly gliding into the waterfall and extending sprints. Like, what? You wanna do what? And it was just that they were just numbed by not being able to release to production, and they ended up in joining in with the stakeholders facade of we delivered 30 story points, and just ignoring their whole own definition of done. And
I think you mentioned something I want to highlight because it's a very important pattern that sometimes develops in the teams, which is this being numbed, right? I mean, we hear it as Scrum Masters when people tell us or when teams tell us that, that's a great idea, but we'll never work here because. And they say it just to let you know, don't take it seriously. Like, they're trying to even help you as a Scrum Master not to be discouraged because they already know it's hard. But what that means is that they have lost hope of ever being able to change anything that leads to them being able to succeed in delivering value. And you mentioned an anti-pattern that I want to highlight as well, which is that at the end of the review, when the topic of conversation is story points delivered or even number of stories delivered, that the topic of conversation is therefore not what is available to customers. And that's a big anti-pattern, a big red light for Scrum Masters out there, that if the review conversation is about, how many bugs we've fixed and how many story points we've delivered, then it's not about what is the impact we've had on the customer.
Yep. I'm pretty extreme in the whole no estimates part. So estimates are a waste.
Very good. At least I agree with that, but that's no surprise for anyone.
A lot of people don't.
All right, maybe that's a topic for another episode. Nancy, thank you very much for that story.
You're very welcome.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.